This is CBC Winnipeg News.
Good evening. Thanks for joining us. Catch and release and reoffend. Municipal leaders in Manitoba say they're fed up with the bail system they argue is too lenient. It's a problem they say is leading to increased rural crime, and they want the next federal government and Prime Minister to fix it. CBC's Ian Fraze has the latest.
We will not stop speaking out. We will not stop pushing for change.
Rural leaders say Canada's bail system is too lenient.
And that dangerous individuals are often given another chance while families are left to pick up the pieces.
The mayor of Portage understands this pain. She knew Kelly Verway, a city employee killed this year by an alleged drunk driver out on bail.
It is something that will stay with me for the rest of my life.
At a convention for municipal leaders, speakers fed up with people being released from custody while awaiting trial spoke out.
I'm speaking about prolific offenders who cycle through the system repeatedly, sometimes committing new crimes before their previous charges or even before the courts.
Lac du Bonnet Reeve was once a cop.
Bail is a vital part of our justice system. It protects the presumption of innocence, but the balance is way off.
In Brandon, suspects violating their bail are charged more than 1,000 times every year.
When we talk about drain on police resources, that's a pretty good example of what we're dealing with.
In the middle of a federal election campaign, they hope the parties are paying attention.
There can be as many promises as all the parties want. Our message is clear. We want the promise to be a change in bail reform, and we want municipalities with their stories to be at the table to make it be the right change.
Leaders say they won't walk away from that fight. Ian Fraze, CBC News, Winnipeg.
Well, if you're looking for a sweet treat or hoping to hop to the store for some Easter goodies ahead of the holiday, be prepared. The price of chocolate might be putting a bitter taste in your mouth. CBC's Gavin Axelrod looks into why what you're eyeing might cost you more.
Churning out chocolate during one of the busiest times of the year at Morden's of Winnipeg.
We had about 3,000 of this size bunny. We call it traditional blossom, and we have about 300 left.
But the high cost of cocoa is not so sweet for owner Fred Morden. He says the cost has spiked 400%.
It went from about $3,000 a metric ton to about $12,000 a metric ton.
Morden says the spike began last fall. A series of climate disasters and drought mean cacao trees are unhealthy. Farmers in Africa are struggling to recover.
They have to take them out and replant, and it takes about 5 or 7 years for these trees to get to a mature stage.
At Decadence Chocolates on Sherbrooke Street, owner Helen Stain says she's had to raise some prices and make some changes to what she makes.
There's no two ways about it. You can't just you can't take on 400% increase.
Outside the grocery store, shoppers are noticing.
The cashier offered the deal of the day was a Lyndhurst bunny rabbit. I said, "Is it $1?" She said, "No, it's $6." I said, "No, it's that's expensive."
I remember I had to go buy them. They were like probably $8 last year, and they're on sale. They're $10.99 right now.
But both businesses say it's not all bad because people are looking for local.
We'd like to keep things in Manitoba, in Canada for sure, and to support local and little businesses like this, to keep them going so we don't lose them.
It's something the owners don't take for granted.
It's huge. It allows me a business. It allows me to stay here.
I think it's really important for us to stick around.
As Morden gets through this Easter rush, he's also looking ahead. He's optimistic the market will correct itself, but says it might take time. Gavin Axelrod, CBC News, Winnipeg.
It relies on cross-border shoppers, but the Emerson duty-free shop says it's at risk of closing. It's had to lay off 5 employees since the end of February. The owner says business is down to levels not seen since the pandemic. It comes amid a decline in cross-border traffic sparked by Donald Trump's tariffs and threats of making Canada the 51st state. The owner says the industry desperately needs the federal government to come to the table with financial relief.
During the pandemic, we took out loans. We borrowed money in order to cover in part to cover our payroll expenditures. That was a bit of a hit to us, we're still carrying those burdens. So some contributions there.
The association that represents duty-free shops is also calling for regulatory changes and tax alignment. They say those measures would help level the playing field with U.S. competitors. For now, the feds are only pointing to its broad support available for businesses to deal with tariffs. Well, Premier Wab Kinew floated another big idea today, a second Manitoba port on Hudson Bay. The Premier made the comments after meeting with a delegation from the European Union. CBC's Bartlett Kivas reports.
Ambassadors and high commissioners from the European Union streamed into the legislative building to talk trade with Manitoba Premier Wab Kinew.
Europe has some needs. Manitoba as well.
Yes.
That's maybe the reason why we have decided to visit your beautiful province.
Kinew said he wants to increase Arctic shipping between Manitoba and Europe, perhaps from somewhere other than Churchill.
The port at Churchill, or another port in Hudson Bay, is an amazing economic opportunity for us in Manitoba and across Canada. At the same time, there is a balance with the environment that needs to be struck there, no matter what activity is taking place.
Kinew suggested the Churchill area may be too sensitive for shipping energy products, such as hydrogen in liquid form. The Premier also said the Churchill River estuary may be too small to handle both ecotourism and container ship traffic.
The Port of Churchill is open to ships in the summer months, roughly around the same time that tourists are heading there to look at belugas in the exact same location.
The cost of a second port would be in the billions. Kinew said Canada has to think big after Donald Trump disrupted worldwide trade.
Post-Trump, any of the dev ideas we had in Canada and Manitoba, they need to be 10 times as big, 100 times as big to stimulate jobs.
The idea of a second Hudson Bay port isn't new. Heather Stephenson's PC government set aside money to study the idea. PC leadership candidate Wally Dowdrich has made it a big part of his campaign.
I love Churchill. Obviously, that's where I'm from. But as a captain on Hudson Bay, I have to say that I understand maritime conditions and that they will never permit Churchill to be a 12-month port, which is what we need.
The company that runs the Port of Churchill says Kinew has always been supportive and took a stoic view of the Premier's comments.
You know, when you're nation building, there are a lot of things that you have to look at, right? I think he's wanting to cover the bases, so to speak.
For Wab Kinew, this is the second big idea with a multi-billion-dollar price tag in 2 days. On Monday, he mused about building a hydro line to Nunavut and getting the federal government to pay for it. Bartlett Kivas, CBC News, Winnipeg.
So as you saw, Winnipeg is hosting more than a dozen European Union diplomats right now. It's all about forging stronger links with our province. EU Ambassador Geneviève Toots is leading the delegation on a trip to this province. After talks at the Legislative Building, the delegation will tour Centreport and the NORAD headquarters. Toots says Manitoba has a lot to offer.
We want to focus on energy, clean energy, and I know that you are a champion for clean energy. You have high-level standards. This is important for Europe. We want to focus on raw materials, so important for the digital transition, economic cooperation with indigenous peoples, but also biotech, digital.
Premier Wab Kinew praised the EU for its commitment to climate change mitigation. He says there is the potential for more shipping to Europe through the Port of Churchill. And a big welcome back to Riley, who had a couple well-deserved days off. And unfortunately, Riley, I see a lot of white behind you, and that's never a good sign.
Yeah, I mean, it happens in April. We do see snow. We do see some wind from time to time. Think back to, I believe it was 2022 in Westman when we saw quite the blizzard roll through in April. So it happens. Yes, a snowfall warning in place for parts of the north. Gillam looking at the potential for 10 centimeters of snow over toward Nelson House to Dooley Lake into this morning as well. I mean, some pockets of heavier accumulation possible, but 5 to 10 centimeters for some of northern Manitoba, not out of the question. You can see the leading edge of that starting to make its way in to places like Flin Flon into Lynn Lake as it progresses its way toward the east. So do expect some snow through the overnight hours tonight for northern Manitoba. The south, though, another bright sunny day. Temperatures reaching +8 this afternoon in Winnipeg, down to 1 overnight tonight. Mostly clear skies. We'll start to mix a bit of cloud in as we get into the day on Wednesday. So +3, partly cloudy first thing in the morning. And then you'll notice that south wind really picking up into the afternoon. South 30 gusting to 50. We'll get some cloud in. Maybe some showers for southern Manitoba as we get later on Wednesday into Thursday. But at least at this point, none of the white stuff here in southern Manitoba. We'll talk about these temperatures and more when I come back.
Maybe very welcome for the Winnipeg whiteout.
Exactly.
Thank you, Riley.
Welcome.
Staffing shortages, hospital closures, and long trips to get care. Why residents in rural Manitoba say it's time healthcare in their communities becomes a bigger election issue. It's been an ongoing issue. Healthcare staffing shortages leading to long wait times and forced ER closures. Patients are traveling further and waiting longer for care. Now doctors and rural residents say it needs to be a bigger priority for politicians this election campaign. The CBC's Rosanna Hempel reports.
The emergency room here at Morris General Hospital south of Winnipeg closed indefinitely in 2023. And for people here, healthcare is top of mind this federal election.
You can go there with somebody half dying, and all it's got is a thing on the door, the emergency's closed.
I think it would all come down to accessibility. How easy is it to obtain that health care?
Megan Adams lives with multiple sclerosis, but it was her son's allergic reaction to kiwi that made not having a local ER frightening.
When your son's life is being threatened and you have no choice but to call an ambulance and take your son on a 45-minute drive, it can be pretty problematic.
Neighbourhood family doctor Nichelle Desailly knows patients are traveling further and longer for health care. She hopes rural health care is a priority this election.
I know that there's a lot of people that are stressed over economic concerns, over tariffs from the United States, but we can't let healthcare fall too low on the priority list. That has to stay at the top.
I work in the emergency room.
Desailly is trying to convince these medical students to work in northern and rural areas. As of 2023, Doctors Manitoba says the province needs about 346 more doctors to meet the national average. It's a pattern of healthcare staffing shortages that's especially playing out in rural areas.
I think it's in a crisis.
The Society of Rural Physicians of Canada is calling on all federal parties to commit to creating a national rural health workforce strategy, funding a skills training program so northern and rural doctors can broaden and cater their skills to the community, and making it easier for physicians to practice across provinces.
One of the major reasons why physicians leave rural areas is they just don't feel that their skill set is meeting the demands of the community.
The Society says rural health care will only get worse without a strategy, leading to even more burnout, poorer health outcomes, and more pressures on healthcare facilities in urban centers.
We have an opportunity to focus on how we support and stabilize rural health services, and that will make it more appealing for people to work here.
For Eileen Klassen, people in Morris deserve a better hospital with more services.
It makes me very worried since I had that stroke.
At 78, she isn't going to move now. She hopes the conversation on healthcare doesn't forget rural towns like hers. Rosanna Hempel, CBC News, Morris.
The province will contribute $1.5 million towards a new centre for women with addictions. Most of that money will be used for capital construction costs for the Ann Oak Recovery Centre. The facility for women and their children will be built next to the Victoria Hospital.
What we're waiting on now is the formal transfer, the completion of the transfer of the land from the University of Manitoba to the government. The government will then lease that property to us for $1 a year for 99 years. We expect some news on that front in a matter of days, if not just a couple of weeks. And when we get the green light, we are ready to go.
So far, the foundation has raised $13 million of the $25 million needed to build the new centre. Well, if you notice some sparks and flames this week, it could be on purpose. The city will be doing some controlled burns. These are aimed at curbing weed growth, which helps preserve endangered plant communities. The burns, however, will only proceed when wind conditions are suitable and appropriate fire guards are in place. It's expected to continue until the second week of June. Well, Winnipeg is ready for a party. A whiteout party, that is. Tickets for the Jets' first two home whiteout street parties went on sale at noon today. All 5,000 tickets for each very quickly sold out. The street parties will take place during home playoff games on Donald Street between Portage and Graham. Well, the dates have yet to be released. Along with an official playoff schedule, fans will be able to enter 2 hours before puck drop. Now, a smaller 1,200-person event will also happen at True North Square Plaza. As of this afternoon, some tickets for the party in Plaza remained for Game 2. And that was just a little taster of some of the costumes that we see during these whiteout playoff parties. And man, you can already feel it in the city. People are excited. They are looking forward to the playoffs, and they are looking forward to some fun parties.
And you know what? You won't have to put a parka on under that
right?
costume.
You could have white T-shirts pretty soon and get out all that summer gear, hopefully, for a long playoff run.
I mean, as we get into the evening hours for these games, yes, you might want to take a sweater with you, but you know what? I think some good hockey will heat us all up a little bit here.
Exactly. So hoping we get that playoff schedule very, very soon.
Temperatures going on a bit of a roller coaster ride. We'll start there because it's going to be a little bit of an up and down here for the next few days. So starting with our temperature trend, one model depiction of what could happen over the next week and a half or so. So we jump back up into the double digits in Winnipeg for Wednesday. Then you'll notice this sharp drop as we get toward Friday. As we start the long weekend, we're looking at a bit of a drop in temperatures. Cold front swings through, and that's going to pull things down temporarily. But then you'll notice we're back into double digits by Easter and really stable as we head toward the end of the month. So a little bit of an up and down as we get through the next few days here. A few things at play. So sunshine as we got through the day today. You can see the leading edge of this next area of low pressure starting to make its way into northern Manitoba. This does move through as we get through the overnight hours. Along a warm front, this frontal boundary, as it makes its way eastward into Manitoba, fairly good chance we'll see a few showers out of this as we get through into the daytime on Wednesday, particularly for places like Swan River, into the Swan Valley, the Parkland, into the Interlake, a fairly good chance of seeing a few sprinkles. The further north you are, likely some mixing before we see temperatures popping up above freezing for places like Flin Flon and the Pas, and more of a snow event for northern Manitoba. We'll talk amounts coming up, but as this frontal boundary makes its way through, it will drive up our winds, also driving up our temperatures as we get through into the afternoon hours Thursday, and then a cold front swings through behind that. And that is what will pull our temperatures down as we get into the day on Friday. Starting Friday, maybe a couple of stray flurries out of some of this cloud cover, but what you'll notice Friday morning will be that sharp drop in temperatures as we get through into the day. Talking snowfall first for northern Manitoba, 5 to 10 centimeters, definitely not out of the question for places like Thompson, Gillam, into Island Lake, God's Lake, maybe a couple centimeters, but certainly some pockets where we could see 10, 15 plus. Again, all temperature dependent because as we get into the afternoon hours tomorrow, temperatures for the most part getting close to or above that freezing mark. So we'll see that transition happening potentially over to some rain into the afternoon hours for places like Thompson down into Norway House. In terms of rainfall for the south, really traced to a couple of millimeters, if that. I was keeping an eye on an area of low pressure that looks like it will stay stateside, but could clip places like Fort Frances, Rainy River as we head later Wednesday into the day on Thursday. Waking up tomorrow morning, +3 in Winnipeg, +4s, +5s back to the west. Thompson starting at -1 tomorrow morning. And then in the long range, 10 degrees for Thursday. Chance we could see a few sprinkles in the morning, Brittany, and then we're dropping off as we head into Friday and Saturday.
All right. Thank you, Riley.
You're welcome.
Well, here's a sure sign of spring, cleaning. We have more to come right after this. Stay with us. Well, we're 2 weeks away from the federal election, and there's a lot of talk from party leaders about border security and your personal security. So which party is the best to take on crime and keep your family safe? That's what our political panel tackled this morning with Marcy Marcusa. Now, we had to edit it down for time, but the full version can be found on our YouTube page. They began with their thoughts on the Conservative Party's 3 strikes and you're out proposal.
People are really fed up. I think they're afraid, and they're worried about their kids, and they're worried about going out in the street. And sometimes perhaps it's a little bit more fear than it is reality, but it really resonates with people. People are scared. And you know what? We have to crack down on crime. I think about all of the fentanyl getting into the country, getting up into northern communities, absolutely killing people. We have to get tough on this, and I don't know what the answer is, but it isn't being soft on this.
Have you soft referring to the Liberals?
Well, basically the policies that we've been following over the last number of years, and this whole catch and release sort of thing. I mean, well, look, if you're a criminal and you think if I do it, I'm going to be in jail overnight, I'm going to be out the next day, what's there to stop you? Absolutely nothing. So you have to take more difficult measures. We also have to go after the people who are perpetrating these behind the scenes, not the guy that's breaking the window or doing whatever he's doing. He's probably drugged up, who knows. The guy who's directing it, who's bringing the drugs in, who's making these things happen, probably living in luxury somewhere.
Dan Vandel, your response to that, and also your response to Dorothy suggesting that the Liberals have been soft and haven't done enough.
I think we have to find the right balance in fighting crime. We have to be tough on crime, especially violent crime. We also have to be tough on the root causes of crime. Relative to us being soft, I think we've heard that message loud and clear. Mark Carney announced this week that he's going to make it harder for people charged with violent crime, violent car thefts, home invasions to get bail. We're upgrading murder charges for intimate partner violence to constructive first-degree murder. We're also recruiting 1,000 more RCMP officers and 1,000 more Canadian border officers to make sure that we can make our borders tougher. So we are doing that, but at the same time, it's important to be tough on the root causes of crime. I think we're going to keep investing in the health and social services, poverty reduction. We're going to keep investing in partnership with First Nation, Métis and Inuit communities, health services, poverty reduction initiatives, education services, which gives people a hand up.
I always like to get around the table once before I know everybody wants to interject, but I do want to get to Aaron Selby then with the NDP. What do you think of what you heard of the other parties' plans, and also what will the NDP do to make families safer?
Well, I will say this, that we both agree, at least Dan and I, that you have to get at the roots of crime. But the problem is their approach to it. They're talking about balancing the budget in the next 3 years. That means cutting services. There's no way you can balance in the next few years and not cut services. And as soon as you cut services, that's going to put more people in poverty. That's going to make more people vulnerable. And that is the root causes of crime. So while we're looking at making sure that we have increased border control, making sure that people have the training to recognize the things that are coming through the border, but we're also talking about making sure people can afford their groceries. We're the only party that's talking about capping grocery prices. We're the only party that's talking about a renter bill of rights. And I have to say, I get really concerned when I hear Poilievre talking about things that are going to override the Charter of Rights. I mean, that sounds a little too much like Trump overriding the American Constitution to me.
Now, you're talking about, I need to refer to this, and Dorothy, then I'll get you to respond. You're referring, and tell me if I'm wrong, but you're referring to the consecutive sentences for murders as opposed to concurrent sentences that Pierre Poilievre talked about using the notwithstanding clause to introduce. Aaron, is that right?
Well, that's right. And that charter doesn't allow for that. And everybody has weighed in. The experts have said that this isn't going to stand up in court. So it's one thing to promise solutions, but if they're not things that are going to stand up in court, then you're just speaking with no actual intent to do anything.
Dorothy, what do you think of your leader's promise on this, the consecutive sentences?
You know, it's a little bit desperate, but I think really he doesn't know where else to go, and I don't know that anybody else does either. I don't hear anybody offering any kind of alternative solution. If somebody comes and kills 6 kids in your family or half your family, you're going through an awful lot of pain, and to know that they're going to be out in a very short period of time. I actually know somebody who had to testify to his mother's murderer to try and keep him in jail when he came up for parole because of the type of sentencing, and absolutely nothing happened. It was very traumatic for him, and the guy got out, and who knows what he's done since then. So there has to be a better solution. I'm also worried, though. I keep hearing about how we're going to close the borders, we're going to do this and that, but we're really not dealing with the issue in Canada. And I go back to fentanyl. I think it's the most pernicious drug that has ever been introduced anywhere. And I think there's a deeper strategy we have to follow to get to this. So first of all, we have drug pharma companies, and I'm sure both Dan and you will agree that the big pharma is pushing opiates, and that is not a healthy thing. Most of us don't need opiates to recover from simple pain. And then we also have people...
I'm going to trust my doctor to make that decision.
Well, I know, and we have been doing that. And look what's happened. People come out, lots of people who are addicted on the street.
Are you saying we shouldn't trust doctors' opinions on what they think
I'm saying that
people?
Doctors are being... look, the advertising doesn't come to you from the opiate companies, from the pharmacy companies. It goes to your doctor. So he's following the advice they give him. They're saying, listen, we've got the stamp of approval from Canada.
That they have to follow, Dorothy.
I just want to get to
something that they take very seriously. And I have to say, I would rather be taking my medical advice from my doctor.
That's fine. And if your kid gets, addicted to drugs then you're in trouble. Let me just finish what I was going to say. So we have to really start to take a look at why we're having so many problems with addiction and get to as you say, the root causes. This is really important. And also we have to look at the way our criminal justice system works in Canada. And it isn't just the RCMP or just the Winnipeg Police or just the CSI, whatever it is, CSIS. It is that there's no communication between them, and they have to get their act together and start looking at the manufacture of fentanyl in Canada and then the distribution.
Dan is holding his breath to get in, but
health crisis, not as a crime. Addiction is a problem with health. It's a health issue. It's not a crime issue. And as long as we're looking at punishing people instead of supporting people and looking at the root causes of addiction and crime, it doesn't get stopped by police. Police are going to respond to the crime,
issue.
Not prevent it.
Okay, we're going to go back to you in a moment because you're disagreeing with that and saying it's not the issue. So I want to be clear about whether or not there's ideological differences in approaching this. But Dan, you've been waiting to get in.
Yeah, there's a lot to unpack there. First of all, on the notwithstanding clause, I can say this is a continuation of a conservative trend that's occurring. First off, with Scott Moe, who's taken away the rights of trans kids in Saskatchewan. Doug Ford has attacked Labour. François Legault's attacked religious symbols in Quebec. And I'm really, really concerned when the notwithstanding clause is promised to be used to commit to respect a party platform. The notwithstanding clause was part of the Constitution to solve real constitutional crisis at the highest level and not to fulfill a party platform.
So you feel this is a dangerous step? That is what your leader has said.
It is a dangerous step. And on top of that, I can't think of one person who's murdered multiple people that's been released early from jail. So if there's examples of that, I'd like to hear that. On January 4th, 24, Bill C-48 became law in Canada. It's a law that makes it more difficult for certain violent offenders to be released on bail. That is now the law of the country. We've moved to get tougher on bail, but the problem is the provinces won't use it, or they won't even talk about it, because the provinces basically wanted to get rid of the federal government and Justin Trudeau, and they're playing politics every step of the way on this very important crime issue.
I'm wondering if there's an ideological difference, do you see, between your parties and how you approach it? Like, Dorothy, what would you say if someone says, well, the Conservatives care about the punishment, but not the prevention?
Well, that's just patently untrue. I mean, of course we do. We also care about the people who are being harmed and also the people that perpetrate these crimes, often under the influence of something very pernicious. I'm kind of thinking about what happened during the Prohibition when, the drug of the day was alcohol, and Al Capone and all his gang had control of law and order in the United States and in Canada as well. And we didn't actually get this under control until we went after the big thugs that were behind the scenes. I really think that's something we should look a little harder at in Canada. And yeah, all these things are Band-Aids, including this notwithstanding thing. They're all Band-Aid issues when we have to go after the root cause, and the root cause isn't poverty. It's about people who want to take advantage of other people and use them to commit crime.
I'm going to go to you now, actually. Well, I'm going to come back to you, Dan, in a moment. I'm just going to go to Aaron first. So I'm going to push you with a question from a different angle. What would you say to people who say the NDP will care about the underlying issues, but yet we're still going to have crimes perpetrated, and because it's not, your party's not tough enough?
I'll quote Dorothy on that. That's just silly to say that. Of course, we want to make sure that people who commit the crime have to be deterred from that. But to say that the root cause of crime isn't poverty it's ridiculous. Obviously, if people don't feel like they have hope, if they don't feel like they have a future, if they don't feel like they have any chance of getting a good job, of any chance of actually buying a house someday, if they can't put food on the table, they're going to feel vulnerable and they're going to feel desperate. So that is what we need to do, is make sure that everybody feels like there is a hope and a future for them and their family. And when you can't feed your family, when you can't keep a roof over your head, it's really, really hard to be thinking about what your next move is.
Dan wants to get in.
Yeah, close to 80% of homicides in Canada are caused by firearms. That's one of the main reasons why we outlawed military-style assault weapons in Canada. Weapons that were designed to be used on the battlefield and not on our streets. The Conservative opposed that every step of the way, especially Pierre Poilievre was vehemently opposed. We will continue to ban military-style assault weapons. We will continue the buyback program for people who legally have these weapons that need to get rid of them. We will continue to automatically revoke gun licenses for people convicted of violent offenses, and we will let the RCMP classify new guns that enter the market rather than the gun industry.
You can watch the federal leaders' English debate here on Thursday at 6 p.m., broadcast live on CBC TV, CBC News Network, and everywhere you stream CBC News. Our local newscast that day will be preempted on television, but you can find our show on our website, cbc.ca/Manitoba, or on our YouTube page. Time now for a very quick break. We'll have the latest from the campaign trail next. All the party leaders were campaigning in Quebec Tuesday ahead of tomorrow night's French language debate in Montreal. Liberal leader Mark Carney promising more help for Canadian workers who want to learn new skills.
Today I'm announcing that my government will launch a new sector-specific mid-career training and upskilling benefit in priority sectors: manufacturing, construction, tech, and artificial intelligence.
Carney says the benefit will provide up to $15,000 per person for skills training in those areas of critical need in the economy. He also pledged to support employers who want to retain workers and grow their companies. Conservative leader Pierre Poilievre has announced a new element of his tough on crime agenda. He says if elected, his government would create legislation to protect Canadian seniors from phone and online fraud.
We're going to pass the Stop Scamming Seniors Act, a common sense law that forces banks and telecom companies to deploy state-of-the-art technology to catch scams and stop them before they happen, not after, when it is too late.
Poilievre says those institutions will have to automatically flag and block suspicious activity like robocalls and unusual transactions and report statistics on their fraud prevention efforts. He says banks and telecoms who don't do enough to prevent senior scams could face penalties of up to $5 million. His proposed legislation would also increase fines and mandatory jail sentences for the fraudsters. NDP leader Jagmeet Singh is also campaigning in Montreal. He says he'll keep the increase in capital gains tax. It's what the Liberal government had planned in the last federal budget, but ultimately scrapped.
New Democrats are committed to fighting for you and your family, are committed to a tax system that is more fair, to investing in you, investing in the services that you need, not giving tax breaks to millionaires and billionaires.
The NDP leader says the decision to cancel the increase would mean a loss of $19 billion over the next 5 years. Money that he says could be put towards healthcare and the expansion of pharmacare. Singh says the entire Liberal Party was in favor of the plan, then suddenly flip-flopped. Canada's inflation rate fell last month. Statistics Canada says it dipped to 2.3% from 2.6% in February. Falling gasoline prices were the biggest factor. StatsCan says lower airfares and tour prices also came down in March as fewer Canadians traveled to the U.S. Last month marked the start of Donald Trump's tariff war with Canada, prompting some consumer backlash toward U.S. travel and products. The inflation numbers are the last bit of economic data to come out before the Bank of Canada announces its next interest rate setting on Wednesday. The tariff turmoil is also taking a toll on Canada's housing market. The Canadian Real Estate Association says the number of home sales and home prices fell in March. Sales were down almost 5% from February, the fourth monthly drop in a row. Well, the national average home price is down almost 4% from this time last year to just over $678,000. CREA is also downgrading its forecast for the coming year, saying the housing market has gone from a slam dunk to treading water at best because of economic uncertainty. Riley's back in now. And Riley, there's been a bit of uncertainty with our weather, whether or not spring is truly here or whether or not we're going to get another bite of winter.
It happens, you know, and I was saying earlier, we do get snow in April. It's not all that uncommon. I don't have it in the forecast for Winnipeg, at least, but some parts of the province looking at the potential for some accumulating snow.
We're just taking it as good luck for the playoffs. That's
exactly.
What we think when it hits April.
All you got to do. Okay, so dog walking forecast, except not, because I heard from you, and there was no Feline Friday on Friday.
No, there wasn't.
So how about we do 2 cats tonight? Feline Friday on a Tuesday, let's call it that. So the first one I've got for you is Remy. Thank you, Jacqueline, for sending this picture in. You can keep sending your pets to talkback at cbc.ca. I know some of you sent some in a while ago, and we're getting to them. It's just there's lots coming in. +3 by the morning hours. And our second one, Lily, thank you, Heather, for sending this picture in as well. Very cute kitties on a Tuesday for you, up to 15 degrees in the afternoon. And some cloud starts to build in as we get into the evening hours. Watch those winds, though. South 30 gusting to 50 through the afternoon. Could see some higher gusts outside the city as we get through the later part of tomorrow into the evening even. So keep that in mind. A bit windy tomorrow. 8 degrees in Winnipeg right now. Some double digits on the map still. 13 in Melita, 11 in Brandon. Thompson right now at 5, and Churchill hanging back a little bit at -11 as we head into the evening hours here. Your overnight temperatures staying above freezing for some of us across the south here. +4 overnight in Dauphin, +3s into Westman on the freezing mark, and Steinbach at 0, and dropping slightly into northwestern Ontario in Dryden, -7 overnight tonight, with varying amounts of clearing, some clouds starting to build into the west as we get through the overnight hours. Into the northern part of the province, some rain, maybe some mixing. The potential for some freezing rain for places like Flin Flon overnight at +1. -1 in Lynn Lake overnight. This is where we start to see that snow pushing eastward as we get through the overnight hours tonight. Gillam at -9, Shamattawa and Churchill both -16 overnight. The main area of snow starts to push east as we get through the daytime tomorrow. Your hour-by-hour temperatures is what I'm showing you here. Again, with some of the accumulations up to 10 centimeters, but if you look at the temperature by the afternoon in Thompson, for example, up to +3. So this particular forecast model keeping this as snow, but some of this likely transitioning over to rain as we get into the afternoon hours. +8s by the afternoon for Flin Flon and the Paw. Southern Manitoba, cloud starts to build in as we get into the morning hours tomorrow. Maybe a few showers into Swan River or the Porcupine Mountains, maybe getting a few flurries into the day tomorrow. +9 by lunchtime in Dauphin, and looking at another double-digit day for some of us. 15 in Melita and Winnipeg, and looking at 9 in Kenora. Brittany.
All right, thank you, Riley.
You're welcome.
Well, sign language is an important element of deaf culture. It's not only crucial for many people for communication, but can help people build community when it comes to the arts. Today is National American Sign Language Day. Joanna Hawkins is deaf, but it hasn't taken away her love of music and concerts. They can still be inclusive. CBC's Marcy Marcusa spoke with Joanna alongside her ASL interpreter, whose voice you'll be hearing, and there is a slight delay due to the interpretation.
I feel there should be more deaf performers with interpreters on stage. So ASL is good to have to interpret. The interpreter can learn. But at the same time, having a deaf performer up there it's their language. It's an authentic language that they would know better. So to be able to hear the words from the performer and be able to interpret that. So it's not just interpreting what an interpreter would do, but a deaf interpreter would more like embody more the style, the music, can go more in depth with understanding the meaning. So I do think that having a deaf person up there with the interpreter would feed the deaf performer what is being said, and they'd be able to take that and be able to sign it even more in their first language, which is ASL. For example, here, hearing people when they're watching somebody perform, like, so for example, a violin, or if they're hearing a guitar, some of the music can kind of maybe touch you a bit, and you remember something, or I remember this song from what I heard on that day and what had happened. Or with the violin, you can hear that it sounds sad or it's slow, so you can understand and relate that to something. But deaf people watching that, they just see somebody playing the violin. They don't understand the meaning that's incorporated into the tone of what is being played. So, we see and we're like, oh, that's cool, but we don't really understand the meaning. So when a deaf performer can analyze the lyrics and are able to give exactly what the musician is trying to express in their song, the sadness that's there, a deaf person can understand that more and then can resonate with the song more. So it's the same as a hearing person listening to it. We can see it in how it's being interpreted.
Before you go, Joanna, what stigma would you like to address that you feel like, why do people think this about the deaf community?
Oh, lip reading. Assume that all deaf people can lip read. No, that is not true. Not all of us can lip read. It's pretty tough actually to master. Actually, only 30% of people are able to lip read. And the rest, have to try and figure that out and kind of fill in the blanks a little bit. It is quite challenging and it's a lot of hard work to lip read. So the best way to communicate with deaf people is ask a deaf person or a hard of hearing person what their preference is. Maybe some like to text back and forth, or some people, they use this app, this talk to text app. So there's one that's called Otter. So you talk and then it'll take what you're saying and put it into text. Maybe some people just like to text back and forth, or some will hire an interpreter, or you learn sign. So there's a lot of different ways to communicate with deaf and hard of hearing people.
Still ahead, we'll tell you why these elephants are gathering in a big circle. Plus, Riley's back with a last check on our forecast. Stay with us. This is video from the San Diego Zoo showing a herd of elephants coming together during an earthquake yesterday. Experts call this an alert circle. The elephants were protecting a young calf when they felt the ground begin to shake. The zoo says the herd returned to normal behavior just a few minutes later, but they did stay close to one another. Yesterday's earthquake in Southern California measured 5.2 magnitude. Well, California is launching a new campaign to keep Canadian tourists traveling south to visit.
The state of mind in the United States of America has dramatically changed as it relates to the approach to Canada. And we want to make sure we send a message to our Canadian friends up north to come to a state where 2 million Canadians visited last year.
That's Governor Gavin Newsom in a social media video he posted last night. Newsom says California is a grateful tourism partner of Canada, and he specifically ties a 12% drop in Canadian tourism to his state to U.S. President Donald Trump taking office. In a direct message to Canadians, he says, don't let, quote, you-know-who in D.C. ruin your beach plans.
Certainly feeling a little beach-like for some of us in southern Manitoba as we get through the afternoon hours tomorrow. But that snowfall warning in parts of the north looking at 10 plus centimeters through Gillam to Dooley Lake. So some accumulating snow in the north, 15 degrees, increasing clouds in Winnipeg. Chance we'll see a few showers in the evening, but what you will notice is these very windy southerly winds, 30 gusting to 50. So 10 degrees for Thursday, maybe a few showers in the morning. And then that cold front sweeps through down to +2 for Friday, for Good Friday. We'll see some clearing through the afternoon. That sets us up for a sunny weekend to +8 on Saturday, then back up to 14 degrees on Sunday. 13 for Monday and 10 degrees on the way for Tuesday. So a bit of a blip there with some cooler temperatures Friday, but we'll get back to regularly scheduled spring. Well, if you have a few ideas for any ferocious sounding names, we can maybe point you to some lion cubs that may need them.
These adorable cubs are your daily lift. These are 12-week-old Northern African lion cubs at a zoo in England. Keepers say all four have had their first health check and are doing well.
With the new arrivals, the zoo has a pride of 10 Northern African lions. The public is being asked to help name the young cubs.
Look how cute they are.
Our childhood cat was named Myron.
There you go.
So maybe one of them can be named Myron. My mom would like that.
There we go. Have a wonderful night. We'll see you back here tomorrow. Myron the lion.